At dawn, when the desert was still wrapped in a cold silence, and the horizon burned with the slow rise of a red sun, a warning echoed across the barren land for the first time. 3 loud, hollow clangs of metal striking metal, each spaced exactly 1 minute apart, ringing out from the old abandoned water tower at the edge of Dust Creek. The townsfolk woke in confusion, pulling curtains aside, stepping onto porches, raising lanterns against the dim morning. No one claimed responsibility for the sound, and no one knew what it meant, except that it felt like something ancient, something heavy with meaning, something that should not have been disturbed. Rancher Cole Merrick was already awake, having spent the night fixing the busted hinges on his barn door, but when he heard the warning, his weathered face tightened. Cole was not a man who scared easily. He'd fought droughts, bandits, wildfires, and every kind of trouble the frontier could throw at him, but the sound struck him like a message carved into his bones. He saddled his horse, Dustfoot, and rode toward the tower, only to find nothing but the wind dragging through rusted metal sheets. But Cole noticed one thing: the ground under the tower had been freshly disturbed, as if something had been dragged or buried there before dawn. When Sheriff Arlen Pike arrived, Cole pointed out the disturbed ground, but Arlen waved it off with a snort, saying kids must have been playing pranks again. Still, Cole didn't buy it. The warning had been deliberate, too clean, too rhythmic, and as the sun climbed higher, whispers began spreading across town that the warning had been heard 3 times a day for the last week by folks living near the canyon, but they were too scared to report it. Cole pressed the sheriff to investigate, but Arlen refused, telling him that his overactive frontier imagination needed rest. Cole left angry, feeling the weight of something looming, something waiting. At noon, when Dust Creek bustled with horses, wagons, and the smell of roasting beans outside the saloon, the warning came again. 3 metallic strikes, perfectly measured, echoing louder than before, rattling store windows and making horses rear in fright. This time, the townsfolk spilled into the streets, murmuring anxiously. Old Grady Finch, who had lived through the Apache Wars, claimed the rhythm matched the code scouts used to signal danger from afar. Others insisted it was the ghost of the tower's builder, returning to warn them of some long-buried secret. Cole, who had been buying feed, stormed out of the general store and marched toward the sound, frustration building into determination. He wasn't going to wait for disaster to find them. Cole rode out again, retraced the echo, and discovered something chilling: a set of massive boot prints heading toward the hills, prints too large for any man in Dust Creek. He followed them until they vanished in a rocky pass, vanished completely, as if the owner had simply dissolved into the earth. That night, as the sun bled into a purple sky and families huddled inside their homes, the warning came a 3rd time. This one so violent it shook dust loose from rafters. But this time, it wasn't from the tower. It came from the canyon itself, resonating like the strike of a giant hammer against stone. The ground trembled beneath Cole's boots as he ran outside, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Flames flickered at the canyon's mouth, 3 torches burning in a perfect triangular pattern. Cole instantly knew this wasn't a prank. This was a message, and whoever sent it wanted to be understood. Cole rode straight into town, barged into the sheriff's office, and slammed the door behind him. "We got a serious threat coming," he growled. But Arlen only leaned back in his chair, boots on the desk, half drunk and half uninterested. "Cole, everything's a threat in the West. Go home." But Cole wasn't the kind to walk away. He gathered townsfolk in the saloon, standing on a table, addressing them with the same fire that had built his ranch from nothing. He told them about the patterns, the prints, the torches, the silence of the canyon, the way the warnings grew louder each time, like whoever was sending them was getting closer. The crowd went quiet. Fear moved through the room like a cold wind. And then young Millie Harper, only 12, stood up, trembling as she admitted that she saw a lone rider on the ridge every night at dusk, staring down at the town. Massive, motionless, silent. Cole promised he would ride out at dawn and put an end to whatever danger stalked them, but an old miner in the corner shook his head and rasped, "Boy, once the warnings start, you ain't supposed to face 'em. You're supposed to run." But Cole wasn't built for running. As lanterns burned low and the townsfolk dispersed, Cole stepped outside and stared toward the black outline of the canyon. He whispered to himself, "If you want to warn me 3 times a day, then come tell me to my face." The desert wind answered with a long, low moan, almost like a reply. Cole didn't know it yet, but his decision, to confront the warning rather than flee, would ripple across history, reshaping the West forever. And as he rode back to his ranch under a moonlit sky, he could feel the desert watching him, waiting for his answer. By dawn the next morning, Cole Merrick was already on horseback, riding toward the canyon with a determination that burned hotter than the rising sun. The warnings had not come again during the night, but he sensed something far worse than sound was waiting in the gorge. The silence felt heavier than the ringing metal ever did. Dustfoot's hooves echoed sharply against the canyon stone as Cole rode deeper, seeing signs that something massive had been moving through the area. Broken branches, crushed rocks, clawed marks along the canyon wall. As Cole dismounted to inspect the marks, he suddenly heard a voice echoing through the canyon, low and slow. "You were warned. 3 times a day, and still you came." Cole spun with his rifle raised but saw no one. Then a shadow stepped from behind a boulder, tall as a legend, wearing a long coat blacker than midnight and boots that matched the huge prints Cole had seen. His face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but his voice carried the weight of old war, old sorrow, old storms. He called himself Revenant Hale, once a captain in the Frontier Guard, presumed dead after leading a lost battalion into the Badlands decades earlier. But Hale wasn't dead. He had become something else. Lost for years in the Badlands, he discovered an outlaw army gathering near the Mexican border, men who followed no flag, who burned towns for sport, who aimed to sweep through the frontier like a plague. Hale had escaped them only to return and warn the settlements, but he learned quickly that most towns didn't listen. Dust Creek was his last attempt. The warnings had been his signal to prepare the town, to evacuate before the army arrived. "You came here," Hale said, "not to flee, but to question me. That means you're either the bravest fool in the West or the only man worth saving." Cole lowered his rifle but kept his voice steady. "If danger's coming, you should have spoken plain." Hale tilted his head. "People don't listen to plain speech. They listen to fear." Cole clenched his jaw. "Then speak to me plain. What's coming?" Hale stepped closer, revealing deep scars beneath his coat. Slashes, bullet holes, wounds no man should survive. 400 riders, H.